This is World Cinema History. This week, the best of 2024 with our panel of Yasi Sofi, Sila Blue, and special guest Vern Quixote. Hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of World Cinema History. Today we're going to take a look at the best films of 2024. With us today we've got our good friends Yasi Sofi and Sila Bloom. Those of you who listen to our podcast, UK Cinema History, know them well. And also our good friend Abhishek is here. You probably remember him most from our Halloween episode, and we're glad to have all of you. And Jelena is joined us in the audience, and we appreciate every single one of you. We're going to begin this year with a section Yasi has created, remembering those who we lost in 2024 who were in the film industry. So I'm going to hand it over to my wonderful co-host, Yasi Sofi. Yasi, take it away.
Hold on. Okay, anyway, so we lost two people from the Star Wars family. We lost Cold Weathers, and we lost the amazing, like the unforgettable voice. We lost James Earl Jones. We also lost someone who cast the spell on everybody. We lost Maggie Smith. We lost Donald Sutherland. Uh, and we lost the amazing Roger Corman. And I thought that everyone has, like, during the holiday they watched Elf, so you probably seen Bob Newhart and someone that uh, you know something that he says, a quote from him that he says that about humor, like he had this kind of humor, uh, organic humor, and he said that God created the world with humor. So, and his style of humor, and that's like, before the room, Eric and I, we were talking, and I said that I thought what is missed in the movies these days is humor, and with and it's a main part. I mean, that's the humanity in the movies. So I thought that that quote from Bob Newhart, that he said that, I mean, the creation is with humor. So that was worth mentioning. And we lost Richard Roundtree, and Roundtree was in Thelma, which is on my list of one of the heartwarming movies, indie movies, actually, this year. So we and just because O.J. Simpson was mentioned a lot in Beetlejuice, I thought that it's we should also mention him as someone that we lost this year. So if I've missed anyone,
He was in the Naked Gun films, so he is a part of
oh, there
cinema
you go.
history. I think you covered it very well, Yazzie. Now, before we open up to discussion, I did want to talk about the gap between last year and this year, where there were a ton of great movies that came out after we did last year's episode that we hadn't seen yet. And Yazzie, you and I agreed that probably 2023 was one of the best years for movies that we could remember. Uh, 2024, not as good, I don't think, but we had things like, a writer's strike and a large change in terms of how films are distributed, and the emergence of AI and things like that. And so, it was a bumpy year. I myself viewed probably over, I know I logged at least 90 new films that I watched this year, so I probably watched well over 100, just considering that there's got to be a few I did that I saw and didn't log. But Yazzie, some of the ones that I had that we didn't get to talk about were Poor Things. We did have a good episode on Zone of Interest. Um, The Holdovers, which I guess would be a good title for this segment. Um, All of Us Strangers, um, American Fiction, and The Boy and the Heron. But you had a couple of others you wanted to add to that list.
Actually, I missed someone very important from like the people we lost this year, because he is also, we have a documentary, and he's Quincy Jones. We lost Quincy Jones, that like he and the amazing, like the great night of music, one great night of music, that was one of the greatest documentaries I watched this year, so I had to add that to the list. And yeah, about the movies that from last year that we watched this year, yeah, All of Us as Strangers, or Zone of Interest. Zone of Interest uh, easily found its way to like my top five favorite movies of all time. And I really yeah, I'm not going to talk about it because I can like go on and on. But Killers of the Flower Moon, uh, uh none of us have watched it last year when we had the episode of 2023. So yeah, I think like I'm gonna let everyone else speak, like if there was any movies from last year that you watched this year. And yeah.
Well, Vern points out in the comments that he had actually seen all of those films in 2023. But Vern, besides being a cinephile, also lives in New York City.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Actually,
Vern.
actually, my youngest daughter, I took her to see Zone of Interest. She's 15, and we went to see Zone of Interest on her birthday. And she's half German. She's half German and African American. So
That's not very nice.
yeah, no, actually, it was her choice, and she actually really enjoyed it. She really. We had a long. It was like a 45-minute train ride, and we talked about it the whole way home.
Still not very nice. I mean that
Shameless plug.
that
Shameless plug. But Yazzie, Scylla, and I participated in an episode of the UK cinema history on Zone of Interest, available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Okay, done shameless plugging. Vern, anything else that you can remember from 2023 before we move on to the rest of this year?
Nope. I'll just plug in as I can because I wasn't expecting to be here. But I'm definitely going to stay the whole time. I think.
God bless you, Vern. We miss you, by the way. All right. Before we go to Sela, because Sela's section is going to be our next section before we move on to this year in general. Abhishek, we all know you to be an avid cinephile, but you always complain that you're not able to get out to the cinema as much as you want to. What are some films that you remember from 2023 that maybe we didn't mention?
Hi everyone. Yeah, from 2023, the films you mentioned, like Poor Things or The Holdovers, which I watched and really loved. All of Us Strangers also. Then there is the David Fincher film, The Killer. Those ones I really enjoyed. Hitman also, I think, is last year or this year. I think this is from this year, Hitman.
Hitman's this year. Hitman's
Yeah.
this year, so you can go into
Yeah.
that when after Scylla's section. We'll come to you because after Scylla's section we're going to go into 2024.
Okay, sure.
All right. Unless anybody's got anything else, I'm going to turn it over to Sila. Sila, you run a very unique room here on Clubhouse where you celebrate artists' birthdays, and you have recently taken to film as one of the arts that you cover on that room, and have covered a range of directors from Luis Buñuel to Alfred Hitchcock to we did an Ingmar Bergman film on his birthday. You did a great series on Akira Kurosawa. What were some of the best films that you got to see in 2024 for the first time?
Well, I just want to do a small correction. I did manage to see a couple of films from 24, some from 23, and I am very happy to have seen those that I saw. I saw one on my flight to Madrid also, which happens to be from 24, and I will talk about that. So I will start with what you're asking for. I must just generalize and say the greatest impression on me was Kitano, and I'm not sure if I can remember his first name, Takeshi Kitano. And he is very well known as the person who famously says, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. But he is not a great actor. He is a great director. And some of his films, including Dolls, has to be one of the greatest surprises for me from this man who always looks a little bit silly to me and out of place with Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. But he has done quite a few films that I just find, and I'm just going to name Dolls as one of them, is extremely poetic film, extremely slow, extremely Japanese, extremely fashionable with the colors, um, with the beggars are wearing Yamamoto pieces or fashion. I would also say that even older than that, I need to mention because for me that's one of the best films I have ever will have seen, if that's grammatically even possible. Gotland from 22 from Hilnor Palmason. That film is just for me out of this world. And Zone of Interest is definitely a favorite of mine, even though I'm against German movies in general, but this is directed by an English person. Anatomy of a Fall is also a little bit older. I thought it was absolutely great. And I will conclude with the last one of the older films, which was suggested by Eric. The Old Oak is just, I think it's a little bit too preachy. I think it's not as good as Kess, but The Old Oak is a wonderful, wonderful piece for a very old man, Ken Loach.
And
Uh,
those with long memories will know that was my favorite film of 2023. So, Scylla, thank you.
uh,
Go ahead, Yasi.
Tila, you have also watched a movie from 2023 that I suggested, the Spanish movie Close Your Eyes.
Well, yes, but that's, if I read that correctly, that is from 24. So that's why I did not mention it now.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, it wasn't available in the United States till 24. It's
Oh,
released
okay.
in
Okay.
Spain in 23.
oh, I
So
didn't know
yes,
that. Okay.
you are both correct.
So I will then take a few minutes.
Oh, I,
This
I'm
is
count.
the
I,
man I
I have
never.
three films on my list that were released in their country in 2023, and we didn't get here till 2024. So you can put that as part of when we get to you the 2024. 24, and we're going to start with Abhishek. You mentioned Hitman first. Tell me what it was you liked about Hitman, and just some other films that you saw in 2024 you liked.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Also, I would like to mention another film which it technically is from 2023, but I think it got released in the US, I think in 24, La Chimera. So that one is outstanding. Like I was, I really loved that film. And from this year, yes, Hitman from Linklater is really nice because I mean it runs very smoothly, and the acting of the lead actor, I'm forgetting his name, Glenn Powell. Yeah, she is superb, and the chemistry between the two characters is crackling. So that one is really great. Also from this year, wait a second. Yeah, I watched Civil War, which was quite riveting to say the least, and uh, it's quite nightmarish experience, especially watching in a big screen. And then there is the Luca Guadagnino film Challengers, which is very messy, and the techno infused with background score, and it's a tennis film, but it's actually about a very messy relationship about three people who are quite toxic to each other, but still they cannot stay apart without each of them. So that one. Then I watched Maxine. So the third part of the trilogy by Ty West, which has the first movie called X. Then there is outstandingly good, like you cannot top that one, called Pearl. And then comes Maxine, which I really didn't like much. It's quite disappointing, honestly. Then there is the Zoe Kravitz debut feature called Blink Twice, which is quite nice. Like as a debut film, she has a really flair for the blocking scenes and how to put camera in a very interesting positions, and also like about the toxic patriarchy we have in our society. Then I saw Joker Folly Adu, the second part of the first Joker film, which I really loved, but this one is quite. I mean, it's not that bad. I really didn't get why the critics are bashing the film so much, but for me, it's quite okay. Like you can watch one time. It's not that bad. Then comes the, I think I'm saying it correctly, Coralie Forge, the French director who made quite a wave with the Substance, the body horror film, which is quite an experience to say the least. I liked the most of it. Towards the end, it goes towards a really very weird turn. So yeah, I can stop now. So if I remember some other films, I will mention. Okay. Also, yeah, I'd like to mention another film, All We Imagine as Light, which is an Indian film. Got the second most best prize at Cannes, which I watched very recently. It's also quite interesting, and I would love to know your reaction of the film.
Well, that's a great list. I haven't seen the Indian film yet. If anybody else has, feel free to chime in. There are a couple on your list that are also on either Yazzie or I's list, so we'll be covering them again. But next, Vern, have you had enough time to put your thoughts together and give us just some impressions on 2024? Vern
Sorry, I got lost in the
walked
app.
away from the.
Nope,
Oh,
nope.
there
I'm
he is.
I'm just gonna listen. I'll chime in as we go along. Actually, I'm looking for recommendations. I think I took kind of a movie hiatus when we shut down the Understanding Movie Room, so I'm trying to get back on the wagon. So I'm using you guys to build up my momentum.
Use us, use us. Okay, now we're gonna move on to Sila's recollection of 2024 because as usual, Yazzie has notes, and so she's going to have the longest section of it, and then we'll move to Yazzie. Sila, now's your time to start talking about 2024.
I just don't have the time to be in the present, to be honest with you. I just found out 10 minutes ago that O.J. Simpson and James Earl Jones died. I didn't know that until Yasi said it. So that's how much I'm in touch with today. So the two films that I want to mention, which highly, highly impressed me in many ways. One I watched on the plane to Madrid and was surprised to find out that it was from this year. Black to Back to Black. It's a excuse me, a what I find to be it really is accurate about the historical facts on Amy Winehouse's life. This is to me quite an impressive work, not so much of art, not to say that it is not, but much more about what it means to be a certain type of a musician, which would not include people like Beyonce. I mean, a real musician. Amy Winehouse in this documentary shows very clearly, like I said, if these are facts, that being a musician is not about entertainment, is not about pleasing people as some people like, giving the people what they want, but that being a musician is about who you are and what life is to you. And the interpretation of this actress, I can remember her name, was quite good outside of the points where I found she was overdoing it a little bit, interpreting those certain movements of Amy Winehouse. But the the portrayal of her life, of how she released what she felt and what she thought through her music, not as a show person, but as a person who lived everything that she was singing. I found that absolutely profound. I also found very good that the Sam Taylor Johnson, I think is the director, does not conclude with a terrific look at what she looked like the last couple of months or years, I don't know, but it just finishes with a wonderful portrayal of her situation, but before she goes back after being sober for so long, that to be a very, very, very good movie, uh, but not really as a cinema piece, but more as a reflection of the importance of Amy Winehouse. The second one is the one that was a little bit too late. I did not know that. And this was suggested by Yasi. This is a very interesting man who normally makes movies every 10 years, sometimes every 20 years. He has only made about four feature films. The first one I also watched, which is from 1973, The Spirit of the Beehive. And in 24, he did Cerrar los ojos, to close your eyes. That is a very, to me, a very interesting and weird inflection between what happens with an actor in the film and what happens with the actor outside of the film, which is actually in the film. For those who do not know it, is basically a man director of a film who is looking for an actor who disappeared. Nobody knows if he died or not. He disappeared in the middle of the film that this man is producing or directing. And the film begins with the real film, meaning the film we're talking about, and we don't really understand what's going. The 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 pictures, the story, the slicing of events, and all to me are focusing a lot on how to deal with the present or how to deal with circumstances because the actor disappears, which nobody understands. I didn't get to understand why he disappeared at all. They found him again. The the man who was portraying an older person, who's asking, maybe I'm saying too much, but I find that several characters are really dealing with not being able to deal with today. They cannot deal with today, cannot handle today. The guy who preserves the film that stopped, he alludes to the fact that we don't use these films anymore. Everything is digital. So many of them are pointing to the difficulties of that particular individual dealing with what has transpired in time, including the relationship he had to a beautiful woman who, when she comes up again in the film, she looks very young, and Miguel looks very old, though they were together many years ago, but one aged, the other one didn't. So I stopped because I was very, very impressed. Excuse me. I was very impressed with Cerrar los Ojos and some interviews I saw with Victor Erice. Very, very recommended to watch this film.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sheila. That's a very good list. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Yazzie. Yazzie is not going to do like a top 10 list. She has it divided into categories. But before I introduce that, I want to point out that, my apologies about yesterday, but Yazzie's power went out, and so that's why we had to delay the episode until today. But um, a quick story about Yazzie and how much I depend on her to keep this podcast going.
Hold on a second.
Even though her
Can I stop you? I'm sorry. Can I stop you right here because that's really like, yeah, cringy. So okay, I wanted to say I forgot again. I forgot two more people for the people that we lost last year, and one of them was Richard Lewis, and the other one was Alan Delon. And yeah, just to stop you right there, I wanted to say this, and
I
there.
am not going to go without telling the story that she, with a flashlight, was going over her notes. I called her on the phone just to make sure she was okay. She had a flashlight out and was going over her notes for today.
That's why like they're all over the place. Yeah, so okay, something yeah, uh just because we lost Roger Corman, I thought that I have to start my list with horror, even though Roger Corman said that uh comedy is the most dangerous genre, not horror, because fear is universal, but comedy is subjective. But yeah, I think it was a great year for. Oh, and the other thing I had to say is that these are not the best of 2024. These are my favorites of 2024, and I had to point that out. And I tried to add as many movies uh, as I could that I thought that it they haven't been mentioned in other lists, or they were not on many people's radars. Some of them were, and one more thing that we missed from last year was Asteroid City, because before we get I get to my list, from movies from last year that we watched this year, because Asteroid City was one of those films that just like what Abhishek was saying, so many movies this year, uh, they were kind of dismissed by the critics, and mostly by the viewers, because of uh, you know because of something that I make fun of these days, and it's that everyone became a content creator. So everyone starts talking about movies, and they imply their own subjective taste on very good movies. And it's this is something that is kind of making a lot of causing a lot of movies being rejected unseen. And uh I think this was something that really bothered me from 2024, and I thought that I had to talk about it here. uh, and I had to say that this you know, what it caused is this overemphasis of audiences approval, and it kind of prevents the artist creativity. But because of the strike, we had this chance to get a lot of movies, a lot of indie movies. So that was something that happened because of that strike, because of the protest of the artists last year. And they protest, they kind of express themselves, they expressed their anger, express their feeling. So these type of very some type of critic, we're gonna have a room on film criticism and our favorite critics, so I'm gonna leave most of it there. But just that this what's so I think the betrayal of the audience toward great filmmakers, or the filmmakers that I'm gonna get to them later, that I that I was trying to find a name for them last night with Eric, and I finally like decided to call them like the prestigious visionaries, the prestigious, they get so rejected these days for, I don't know, for, again, for the this echo chambering, these type of uh you know yeah. So I'm gonna stop right here. I'm not gonna go on this rant, but yeah, I'm gonna start with horror, because horror is a very daring genre, is a genre that you can see a lot there that you cannot see in any other places. They you know this year we saw a lot like the old formulas, the old reliable formulas, and we also saw a lot of experimental new voices. So for instance, like the one of them, like Abhishek mentioned, the substance, this blend of genre and substance. We had you know a uh, a remake. We had this comeback of vampires as usual, and we're gonna have a room on Nosferatu, so we're gonna talk about the vampires there. I'm gonna leave the vampires there, but one of the most interesting vampire movies, Dan Stevens, was Abigail. So what happened? I think what happened with Abigail was that uh another problem in 2024, and it was like the biggest draw was not the movie, and it was the marketing of the movie. The same thing that happened with Furiosa, with Civil War. You see, the trailer kind of give away what something that could have been the most excellent twist of this film, but they gave it away. Or they kind of market the movies in a way that they are not. Like, for instance, Civil War is not in any shape or form, that I think we're going to get to that later, is a movie with a political message. It is actually a journey of photojournalism, this is this blend of how impactful the art is on culture, and all art and culture is on society and politics, and the power of this, the authentic truth telling of the photography, and the importance of journalism, that this And another movie that falls to that is this, I think the wrong marketing is The Complete Unknown. And I brought it up here right now because this, I was telling Eric last night that verse from Dylan, that uh the writers and critics that you prophesize with your pen, that is exactly the premise of Civil War. That is what's happening there. Like, the it's kind of a great commentary of not being, the again, being objective in delivering the news, on telling the truth. That's something that, and I think this marketing that is, these type of marketing is another thing beside these wrong criticisms of movies, is was something that create made like the audiences dismiss a lot of good movies this year for any reason. So anyway, that's Abigail. Anyway, but that, uh, despite knowing the twist, the movie created, for me, it had like a certain that gore in it, that unhinged gore creates something else. And gore was something that was very well kind of explored this year with another movie, Substance. The other movie, the another very interesting horror movie this year was In a Violent Nature, that kind of shifted the perspective. I know that we've seen a lot of movies like that before. It's not anything new, but uh still, th- I was so happy to see someone is experiencing that, experimenting that again. Oddity, a folk horror that, yeah, and also we had like Robert Eggers' amazing Nosferatu. And but going back to the marketing, we had a movie that benefited a lot on that note from a good, smart marketing, and that was Longlegs. And Longlegs also is a movie that kind of, uh, it was like, Osgood Perkins. He told his love for cinema, which was another thing that we saw a lot this year. Just like the movie that Sila was talking about, the Spanish movie Close Your Eyes. And it was like one of the themes this year was a lot of homage to cinema in documentary and in fiction. For Osgood Perkins, I think that this he made an infusion of so many great psychological thrillers of the past. And also in Nosferatu was also a kind of subtle and overt homage, through like to the past Nosferatu's made. And this is something, this is this other thing that this year a lot of movies have been criticized for, like, for instance, Joker. They were saying that, oh yeah, Joker is like, I don't know, the taxi driver, and the or what's that, the king of comedy. So what
New York, New York, New York,
or
New York is was
or yeah, and the second one, New York. So but what I'm trying to get here is that this it does not kind of, it is not an argument to say that it's a bad movie. I You might like say that, okay, I also said that, which I'm probably going to say right now, that Brutalist, for instance, is a lot similar to Tar, or to The Draftman's Daughter. But it doesn't look, there is a difference between copy, between cloning a movie, between paying homage to a movie, between uh you know using the movies of the past, the masters of the past, as an example to tell your own story. So this is like Long Legs is a great example of that. Long Legs is like a, that the it's full of imagery. Long Legs is a folk horror, is also a psychological thriller. It has, like, so many people said, called it, like so many critics called it, like the Silence of the Lambs of for Nicolas Cage. So that it I wish like we could go deep into that, because it has a very controversial ending. That ending was kind of turn off for a lot of people. But here it is. If you think that these movies are ripoffs of great movies from the past, you must have known that how these stories were told on those movies from the past. And then it helps you kind of decipher these open endings. These that's open endings was something like endings that trust the audience and allow them to decide, allow them to see, like Civil War, like Long Legs. So if we are going to criticize movies for being so similar to the movies of the past, we should know that these open endings, uh, these movies are trying to like give the audience to this credit to decide for themselves. So anyway, on that note, my what and there's another like honorary mention from the horror movies for me, and it's I know you're gonna like, perhaps you're gonna like complain about it, but it's the Late Night with the Devil, one of that. And what Late Night with the Devil does is that it's kind of, again, this, what it does, why it stayed with me, was this powerful imagery and costume and production design of the 70s. And also because I like this is personal, I like the late night TV, the late night shows. So this blend of these, it was, and also the blend of things was something that was very well done this year by so many indie filmmakers. And you know the what happens in this graininess of the 70s, it creates a very kind of gnarly imagery, and for that was very kind of fitted this. It wasn't, and also it was a new take on the found footage that I really liked. That was very well done. So my other movie, not my other horror movie, is Humane, and the other one is the very interesting, very indie movie called Little Bites. And I suggest, like, don't if you, I really suggest Little Bites to people to see, because I'm gonna say it here right now. I promise you're gonna hear from that filmmaker a lot again, because that is the example of making a movie low budget and having this idea and image of what you're going to do, and with the lowest of budgets, but with the vision and having the create, like, spice it up with creativity, and you can tell your story in, you know you don't need big gimmicks, you don't need big budget. That is the movie to prove that. And Little Bites, so remember that. Okay. So my favorite, but I don't even know if I can call it a horror movie, but Ryuzuki Yamaguchi, that we all remember, the Oscar winner for Drive My Car, And Vern probably remembers we did that movie. We watched that like 5 hour movie, Happy Hour of his. His first movie is 5 hours. It's Happy Hour, and so he has this movie called Evil Does Not Exist. And he tells a story in a very small Japanese village that, this is the famous story of greed, famous story of, the turn of modern greed and the defendant of nature. Like when the capitalism is coming to get your lands, that like uh you know and but what happens here that I was telling about, I was saying that the movies with like that leaves the ending, the decision to the audience. Here it's purposely vague. And if you're familiar to the style of Ryozuku Hamaguchi, like Drive My Car, you can tell that he could do it masterfully. He knows what he's doing. And uh it's, just like the, again, I'm kind of going back and forth between these movies. The movie offers no conclusion. Instead of giving you a premise, just like what the title is saying, the same thing that is with Complete Unknown. You go to a biopic, like musical biopic, you know unlike that Amy Winehouse movie that Sila was talking about. You go to this movie and you get nothing about Bob Dylan, but you learn a lot about that era, the music itself, the collaborations, the you know the 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 sense that why that era of time is so influential, why it was so important for the world. So and here the movie is called Evil Does Not Exist. So this is exactly it. It's this movie says there is no good, there is no bad, there is just is. And it's this at the end of the movie, this vibe that it gives, this sense that you get at the end of the movie, I can't that is the horror of this film. You don't see anything as you have seen before that is described, nothing that is described before to describe the horror genre here. It's not gore, it's not slasher, it does not have like the shock, nothing. But the ending is so horrifying. And just because it leaves you with it tells you that yes, there is tragedy, there is beauty, but you know, it's just how it is. And
Real quick,
yeah,
Vern, do you have any thoughts? Since you've also seen Evil Does Not Exist before Yazzie moves on?
Yeah, let her finish her thoughts, and then I'm
that's
still
it. That's that
kind of.
that's my that these are my thoughts. And this yeah, this I think this is like the coexistence of nature uh with people. This uh that maybe we can say it has roots in folk, but uh yeah, this that is my pick for the horror of the year. Evil Does Not Exist. So yeah, go ahead. Oh, I didn't know, Vern, you've watched it. Cool.
I'm always surprised when I've watched movies because I had forgotten it, but I did. I watched it on the Criterion Channel, and I kind of watched it because I watched Drive My Car, and I knew it was the same director, and like that ending, it does come out of left field, and I wasn't expecting it because I didn't read anything about it, and so yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but it's hard for me to talk about it without kind of spoiling the ending because it's such a slow run. Like what's happening, like the dynamics between the characters, and you know what it's saying about like these kind of real estate forces that are taking over this small town. Uh, and I thought it was really interesting. And then when that surprise ending happens, it's not like a horror ending. It's horrifying in the sense that when you pick up the newspaper every day, there's horrifying news, like somebody takes a left turn and nobody expected it. And it's like the kind of thing that you think only happens in the movies, except it's every day in the newspaper. And so, like the reason I want to go back and revisit again is to just see if there are hints and clues earlier in the film, that would make it so that ending is an outcome that you would expect. And I think I think it was a good film, like because I saw it months and months ago, and usually if it's not a good film, I don't remember. But I can remember a lot of very distinct scenes, and there's father child relationship, and there's this small town, and the characters are all very distinct. And um, and I think when you think environmentally, what's at stake in this community, like the ending does make a little sense, especially like these two horrific killings that just happened this week. They seem to kind of come out of the blue, with these kind of normal seeming people, like when they were in the midst of their career, and then suddenly they do this horrific thing, and you're looking at them like, why did that happen? And I think in this character, you can see why something might crack in a person like that, and that nobody would be able to recognize it, unless they were, part of his inner monologue. But I thought it was a strong film. I thought it was a really strong film, and I appreciate, I like when Yasi was talking, I was like, how is this on the horror list? But then I thought, like there's this horrifying news. Like actually, this is kind of a side point, but it kind of hammers it home. So I live in New York City, and yesterday in the news, um, there was a killing in my building. Like there's a store on the ground floor, and uh, my mailman, the sweetest mailman I've ever had. Like everybody in the building agrees he was a complete sweetheart. He went into a deli to order a sandwich, and another person ordered the same sandwich, and the sandwich got delivered at the same time. And within a minute, he was dead on the floor, stabbed to death, like completely gutted. And that happened 2 days ago. And so in my building, there's just a lot of buzz, like trying to figure out, because this mailman, he was a complete sweetheart. He was like nice, friendly. In New York, a lot of times the mailmen, when they deliver packages, they deliver them to the first floor. They don't take them up to your door. He always takes them up to the door. He always talks. He holds the elevator for you. And so it turns out that the woman who stabbed him was trans. And when they got the sandwiches delivered at the same time, it just set the trans woman off. Then he said something. The trans person spit on him. He was going to take off his jacket so that he could fight. And then she just stabbed him and he was dead. And people in my neighborhood, she lives down the street in supportive housing. So people in the neighborhood knew her as a sweet person. And people knew this postal worker as a sweet person. And so that he was dead and she's in jail now, it's astonishing the whole block. And like that's kind of how There Is No Evil kind of ends. It's like it just comes out of the blue, and it was all there, and it's yeah. So that's part of the reason that I actually want to go back and revisit the film, because I think that's happening a lot. I think it's probably always happened a lot, but now in the media, everything is so sensationalized. It ends up leading the news a lot more often. Yeah. So I think it is a horror film for sure.
Yeah, it is categorized as horror, but just like what you said, that's what I'm saying. The horror of it is because it says this is what it is, and the existence is the horror, and very very philosophical, but without rubbing it on your face. That's what I like about it, because we see a lot of movies with this theme of like coexisting with nature, this kind of the greed of corporations coming wanting to take over. But that is not what is happening here. It's just the very small part of the film. The it you know it is so well shot and very well made, and it does not fall into this normal kind of storytelling. It's bleak, it's beautiful bleak, that's the thing. And
Yeah, but
that's it doesn't give you a solution for this, for the symptoms or the global crisis. No, no, it's not like Don't Look Up.
yeah,
It's
but
not that at all.
but you know what? I would say that it actually is. It's just showing that our sensibilities are changing. Like when we watch John Dillman, like you don't see the ending to John Dillman coming until it's there. And this ends the same way, and then you have to go back and rewatch the film, and then you have to go back and rethink, well, how was society then? Like what could be going on in this woman's head that she would do that to one of her best clients? And with the there is no evil, or whatever it's called, what would drive him, like all the forces that are driving him to make the decision that he makes, to do that act, they're all there from the beginning. It's just like we're not aware because there's no voiceover. It's not explaining, it's just showing. And so when the film is over, you've got to kind of go back and watch it again. And then all those forces that are putting pressure on that community and that are putting pressure on him, they're all there. It's just like because he's not overacting, he's not being very demonstrative in the things that he says and the things that he does, that you wouldn't think that. But like our facial expressions, our bodily expressions aren't often mirrors of what's happening in our heads. And I think, if you go back and watch the film again, it's all there. And so it's a different sensibility. Like you can't expect it to be like Marvel movie action or Marlon Brando method. Like, some quiet people are killers. you know
Yeah, the other thing that is the scary is that this village, this small Japanese village, it's it's like the people that we're normally like we like in Ozu movie. Oh, they're this quiet, lovely people. Their quietness, you know, that also become so eerie. Th- it's like they're sleepy. It's like they're fallen asleep to what's happening. And I think that is also played to that horror aspect. But okay, I'm gonna get to the one more movie that I have to say. I'm not going like that, like I'm not going deep into that, but it's uh we can also categorize one of my favorite movies this year, but I can also put it on the uh, in so many genre, is The Beast. It's very hypnotic. And if you remember, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Let the Right One In, the what's his name, Jean Avida Linquist, based on his book, Let the Right One In. So based on the same novel, we have Handling the Undead, and that is that was a great horror movie. And also I can put it on the foreign language movies, I also on the indie movies. And The Girl with the Needle is the movie that I haven't watched. I'm looking forward to it, probably falling on the next year. And yeah, so but the trailers, they're so telling. And also Melville put in the chat that it's is it like a Black Mirror, sort of like the Twilight Zone style of horror? I think, Vern, we can agree that yes, that like evil does not exist kind of falls into that. The other movie that I want to say, it was actually in the box office, was the Halle Berry movie Never Let Go. It was also, again, kind of, the ending subverted what I expected. I mean, the whole movie subvert what I expected, that where it's going, or like what you expect from the genre, or these type of stories. But that went on a totally, in a it was totally different. So yeah, a great, again, like a great year for horror. So everyone has been quiet. I've been talking for a lot, so I'm gonna like uh I'll go back to my list. So Eric, uh, Ethan, hi, welcome.
I need to say something before you continue. Uh, Vern, that story 2 days ago in New York tells me one single thing. New York doesn't have enough.
He said safely from Spain, having
Yes,
just
Yeah,
left New York.
you
I'm
know,
gone.
I'd be inclined to go to believe you to go with that, but then my daughters are the two sweetest people you'll ever meet, and they're both New Yorkers, so I don't know. It's a little bit more complicated.
That's all the time we had for part one of World Cinema History's 2024 in review. Join us again for part two, where we'll be going over some of the trends of 2024, and I, Eric Chavity, will review my top 10 list of the best films of the year. Thank you again for listening. If you're on Apple, please give us a subscribe and a like. And if you're listening on the Spotify or Apple Podcast, hey, why not take a minute and write a review? Thank you very much, and have a great one.